Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us for today's webinar presentation titled The Path to Predictive A/B Testing. We have two awesome speakers today on the line. First, our CTO and co-founder, Mitch Eisen, and our product manager, Michael L. Magdad, who are very knowledgeable about all of our products and all of our tools that we have, and we're very excited to talk to you today about how to get more from your data by using tools like A/B testing for messages and landing pages to get that data-centered focus on your marketing that we're all looking to achieve. Before I let the guys get going, and I know they're rearing to get started, I have 2 points of business that I'd like to get out of the way with you guys. Number one, if you have any questions at all, please type them in on your GoToWebinar module. On the bottom, we have a questions section. Type in any questions that you have, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the show. So we're going to hold them to the end, and then we're going to try to answer as many as we can. Number two, we will be sending a follow-up email that will include the video recording of this presentation. So if you have to jump out early, or if you have any colleagues who might enjoy the presentation, we'd love for you to pass it along to them. So just hold on tight, keep an eye out on your email over the next couple of days, and we will have that video for you to share and to watch again. So with that, Michael and Mitch, the floor is yours.
Hey, Javi. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining with us on this late summer afternoon. I know a lot of people probably planning or been on vacation, so we definitely definitely appreciate you guys making time to join with us today. So, one point of business as we get started here. Like to just say, if anybody wants to tweet along, use our hashtag. It is Real Marketing Tips. Anything you want to share, any comments, suggestions, what have you, we love to see your feedback, and obviously we'll reply back to anyone who engages with us. So again, that's Real Marketing Tips on Twitter. Definitely tweet out whatever you like. So to kind of get started, A/B testing, I want to just bring up a data issue, right? We're kind of inundated with data, and this stat from IBM I think is pretty amazing. Every day we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. That's an insane amount of data. And in context, that data is 90% of the data in the world has been created in the last 2 years alone. So all the photos that you're taking, all the documents that you've created, all contributes to this, and it's kind of becoming more exponential as time goes on. So when you look at this, it's obvious that we're drowning in data. We have way too much, and you're probably asking me, well, Michael, A/B testing, isn't that just going to kind of generate more data? The answer is yes and no, and we'll get into that in just a bit, but I can definitely understand a marketer's pain point. I actually do a lot of the marketing here at Real Magnet as well, and you can have so much data you kind of feel like maybe you kind of feel like you can't do anything just because you're overwhelmed with the amount of data that you already have. And as we've said, this trend is not slowing down. More and more data is being created on a daily basis. Everybody has smartphones, everybody's interacting, creating, and it's definitely going to be something that just kind of takes off exponentially. And Mitch will talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. But let's start off with the basics first. What is A/B testing? Well, A/B testing is really kind of comparing, hopefully, only two different options. You can have many more later on, but comparing two options to see what leads to a theoretical conversion. Now, conversion can be anything. It doesn't have to be somebody signing up for a particular webinar or for your annual meeting or any kind of physical event. It could just be getting people to read a piece of content that you have on your association blog or your website, or just even having them sign up for updates on a certain topic. And it's really kind of testing content, layout, and other items to figure out what works the best for your recipients and for the people kind of browsing and engaging with your content online. So, with A/B testing, what can you test? And I don't want to overwhelm you, but you can test quite a lot, actually. You can see here there are numerous different types of things to test, and the main kind of point here is I think a lot of us focus on one or two different aspects, and I think most of us kind of focus on email. And the first thing, it's really the from field and subject line. I think most of us kind of do these types of tests. So you can kind of continue on. That's all great things to test. Maybe a more personalized from field or a personalized subject line is going to have a greater impact in getting people to engage with your content. But there are a lot of other things that you can test as well. Headlines and subheadlines, and obviously that's within the creative copy of either your email or your landing page. So again, kind of basic right now. We probably are experimenting or have done some of this in the past. But there are other things, just like paragraph text. Now, I think this is usually overlooked because we kind of think the paragraph text is not important. It's usually the headline, the subject line. It's kind of the from field. Those are the kind of more sexier things to test because it's a lot easier to kind of tell their impact. But you could also test paragraph text to see if something shorter or longer will kind of get you more conversions or more engagement, whatever your goal is. In addition to that, images. Now, this is my favorite one because I usually kind of feel that this gets the more impact, right? If you have a really great visual to sell whatever you're trying to get somebody to do, you're more likely to get engagement and clicks. I mean, to me, I want to go to Paris. Wouldn't mind clicking on that Eiffel Tower. But other people may feel differently, and it's really important to kind of optimize not only your content, but your creative as well. Now, links, again, kind of sending people to your blog, or you can kind of think of it this way. I know a lot of you guys do annual meetings, right? Is it better to send them directly to the registration page to have them sign up, or is it better to send them to the home page so they can kind of browse around to understand exactly what they might be signing up for? That's just more of a kind of a stark example, but you're able to kind of test that as well. Now, what I like to change around too and to play with is call to action, right? Call to action, you want them to do something, but the language, the color, everything kind of plays a part in it, and even the location. Is it above the fold in the email? Is it below the fold? Have impact. So as you can see, we're kind of going through a lot of different data points, and you can definitely feel a little bit overwhelmed with it, but there's even more. And I'll leave with this. It's the type of content. Should you have the logos of, let's say in our case, all our integration partners, so Aptify, Personify, and so forth? Should they be there? Should you have your awesome Real Magnet Award that you won at our mug? Hopefully, you have that in your emails. But you can put that kind of content on both your landing pages and your emails. And I think that kind of stuff usually gets overlooked on terms of the more kind of like, what should my headline be, or what should my subject line be? Now, again, going back to being inundated and overwhelmed, you're probably saying, like, get real, Michael. How am I going to do any of this? It is just never, ever going to happen. And trust me, I hear you. You can't test everything all at once. That's a little bit ridiculous, because if you did, you'd never have time to actually launch any campaigns. You'd just be building everything. So there's a couple different things that you can do. You guys are kind of telling me this probably. Why can't you do this? It's because you have too much to do. You have way too much to do, and I get it. We have too much to do here as well, but I want to highlight on one point, and it's really on focus, right? It's focus and iteration. So you really should pick on what you think is going to move the needle the most. It may be the subject line, it may be the from field. But once you start to do that, once you've figured that out, you can start to move on. But I like to share this quote, and those of you who joined me on the last webinar have probably seen this before. Marketing is about values. It's noisy out there. You're not going to get a lot of chances to get people to remember much about your organization. So you have to be clear about what you want to kind of portray. And that's from one of my heroes, Steve Jobs. And I really think it's something that should kind of proliferate across your marketing efforts. You should really kind of remember going back at it. What do you want them to know about your organization, and how do you want to convey it? Once you have that, everything else is kind of tweaking and kind of enhancing that experience. So why should you do A/B testing? Well, you can continually improve the experience. You can improve the conversion rate. Once you have a bulletproof headline or a bulletproof image, you can start to play around with the buttons, like on the call to action. Maybe I should have them in a different place, or should I have a different color? You can really start to kind of improve continuously the experience for the people visiting either your landing pages or your email content. And it's a really great cycle, right? Once you've accessed the kind of change that you need to make, you've designed it, you've implemented it, and then you can evaluate the results, and you can really start to kind of get this compounding effect. If you guys work with your development teams in your organization, you probably realize a lot of them do agile development, right? It's iterative development. They keep trying to improve the experience little by little, and at the end of the year, you have a major impact, a major change from all those kind of little minor tweaks that may not seem significant at the start, but really actually are in the end. And you know, I don't want to have anyone feel overwhelmed because you're already ahead of the game. Any marketer who's worth their salt, and I'm sure all of you are, you have a gut feeling. And take a look at this. Which of these landing pages are more effective? Is it this one, which has like 90 things to select, or is it this one? So definitely, you have a gut feeling, and always kind of go with that at the beginning, right? Go with what you know at the beginning, and then iterate and kind of improve on that. So with that, we actually want to show you how you can do that within Realm Magnet. So I'm going to transfer you over to Mitch Eisen, our CTO, and he'll be able to go in the application, talk about how you actually can do it, and then talk about predictive and how you can kind of see A/B testing through the predictive lens. So I'll just transfer it over to Mitch now.
Thanks, Michael. I'm trying to get that transferred over to me. Okay.
I'll just take a second. It should be on your screen in just a moment.
Sure. So, while this is transferring over, I think Michael has made a very compelling case about why you should do A/B testing. But before we jump into it, there's a couple of things that I want to point out. I think really the first one is there's this kind of overwhelmingness, right? As Michael was talking, I was thinking about everyone kind of visualize sitting on their couch or their favorite chair, or maybe it's in front of their computer, and watching TV or watching on the internet. Think of how many choices you have. On the one hand, it's great. There are so many choices. But on the other hand, there's almost a paralysis because of the plurality of choices. And I think that comes into the whole kind of marketing segmentation, A/B testing, that there's so many possibilities that it's almost a paralysis of not doing any of it. And it's been our mission here at Real Magnet to take the things that are sort of complex and make them simple. And so that's one of the things that I want to show you today, how you can immediately start gaining the benefits of A/B testing without all of this massive effort or this paralysis, well, I don't really know how to do it. So I want to divide this presentation into two parts. The first one is to show you what you can do right now in Real Magnet in terms of A/B testing. And as Michael talked about, we're going to discuss A/B testing from emails and also A/B testing on landing pages. At the end of that, I want to give you a little bit of a peek under the hood of some of the things we're working on here at Real Magnet towards the future of how to even make it easier to consume all of this data to help you make better choices and optimize your marketing efforts. Okay, so let's first start with A/B testing. And as Michael pointed out, and I think very well, there's compelling reasons of why you want to do it. For us, A/B testing is part of the marketing automation suite. You can create any type of campaign in the marketing automation suite. Obviously, one of them is A/B tests. And again, our goal is to make it very easy for you to get it up and running extremely quickly. So we have a couple of questions to ask, a few forms to fill out, and boom, off to the races. So let's think about what that A/B test is. By the way, I know that A/B testing works. Everyone's like, how do you know that A/B testing works? Because you yourselves were the word victim came to mind, but it's the wrong word. But you were the recipients of that. Because every time we do our webinar promotion, we test those subject lines to see which ones actually garner and generate higher open rates. So let's just say that I've got one email that I want to send out, right? I've got an email, there's one webinar promotion, come to the webinar. So I've got 5,000 people, 10,000 people, maybe 100,000 people that I want to promote it out to. But I don't know what's going to generate the most interest or the most action. So I want to test it. So the first thing we ask you is, who's going to be in this campaign? And basically you put together a group of people, and that is the group that you ultimately want to send all of it to. Doesn't make a difference how many there are. Let's call it webinar prospects. And now we say, okay, how many samples do I want? Typically these are called A/B tests, but if you want, you can do an ABC test. If you want, you can do an ABCD test. Truth of the matter is, once you get beyond 3 or 4, it becomes kind of diminishing returns on what you get. So typically we would say do an A/B test or maybe an ABC test. So what are you doing? Let's say we've got a list of 100,000 people. Well, I want to sample a certain percentage of that. Now, I can do one of two things. I can say take 10% of the total, which is some people want to do. Alternatively, I can say, yeah, you know what? I want to just test an actual number of recipients. Out of these 1,000, I want to test 100. So either way you want to do it, you can do it as a fixed number of what you want to sample or as a percentage of the entire group. Either way. And again, there are legitimate reasons to do it one or the other. Now, as Michael said, you don't want to be testing a variety of things at the same time because the results will be muddled and mixed. You want to focus on one element, one parameter, one thing to see what moves the needle. And we give you a number of choices. So you could test a subject line. Which subject line works better to get people to open an email? One of the subject lines is learn the newest trends in predictive technology. The other alternative subject line is listen to Mitch drone on for 1 hour. Which subject line will garner the most open? So you can choose between subject lines. Alternatively, pre-header text is very important now. Pre-header text is that 1 or 2 lines of text that people will see in their email client that you can configure. So you got them to kind of scan through the subject line, cool. But what about that first kind of pitch? You may debate about which one is better. You can test that. Alternatively, you can test a from field. Hey, the subject line, I know it's not let Mitch drone on for an hour. It's come learn the best trends about predictive technologies. But is it better if it comes from info at Real Magnet? Or is it better if it comes from Mitch at Real Magnet? I don't know. You can test that. And lastly, you can test the time of day. Is it better if I send this email out in the morning? Is it better if I send it out in the afternoon? So these are some of the elements or some of the things that you can do in an A/B testing. Let's keep it simple now for a subject line, right? Learn more about predictive, right? That's our first subject line. Or hear Mitch drone on. I've got my own sense of which one is going to be the best, but we'll see, okay? Now, I say, okay, when do I want to send out this test? So let's just say that it is going to be Tuesday morning when I want to send out the actual blast for the email to those 1,000 or 100,000 people. What I want to do is test before it. So I simply find the message that I want to test. And don't forget, in this particular one, we're simply testing it's the same message, but a different subject line. Put in my from field, pre-header text, and boom. And then I'm going to say, okay, send this message, because we're gonna send it out actually on the main event on Tuesday. Send it out on Monday at 9 a.m. Okay, great. Now we know 5% of that total is going to be sent out. Half of those are going to get this subject line. Half of them are going to get this subject line automatically. You don't have to do anything. Now you get to say, okay, I'm going to send that out. So first off, how do I want to determine the winner of this A/B test campaign? There are two options. One, open rate or click rate. Now, typically, subject lines and pre-header text, those definitely gravitate more towards open rates. If you're testing links or things within or different messages, it might be click rate. But we'll keep it simple, open rate. Okay, when do I want to evaluate it? you know what, I want to evaluate it, give them 24 hours. So the next day at 9 a.m. So the next day comes around at 9 a.m. and it says, hey, which of these subject lines has the highest open rate? That's simple, and that automatically determines the winner. Now, you can even further automate that in a couple of ways. Number one, you could send yourself a notification at that time. This A/B test wakes up at 9 a.m., determines the winner, and sends you a notification. Hey, Mitch, guess what? The subject line that won is number 1. Or not or, but and, you could also choose to automate the entire campaign. That once the winner is determined, go ahead and send it out to the rest of those 95,000 with the winning subject line. So again, I went through it in a little bit more detail, but just think of the power of that. You set it up once, you can configure it to automatically determine the winner based on the criteria that you set and automatically send it out to everybody. Really, really very valuable. So let's now take a look at what it would look like from the tracking. Because again, once you send this out, you definitely want to see the result. Okay? So there's a couple of things that you can see with this one. We'll look at the A/B test here, and we'll look at what a sample result set will be. This one is already complete. It'll show you how many people were in the campaign. Because this one is already over, it shows you exactly who the winner was. In this particular case, it was subject line B. Subject line A was register now. Subject line B was register early and save 20%. Obviously, we sort of set this one up to give more of a discrete example of which one would be better open. But you can see it automatically shows who the winner is. And by the way, if you're looking at this while it's in progress, it'll show you in real time which subject line or from field or pre-editor text is winning. So automatically show it to you. Then it'll show you of the two subject lines, comparing them. How many were sent, how many were delivered, how many were opened, how many were clicked. So you can get a real sense of how those two things did compared one to the other. And then finally, because I had this one send out to the entire group, it shows me of the remainder, in our case it was, let's say 95,000, exactly how many were sent, how many were opened, etc., and also the engagement of it. So, you know, I would highly recommend using these types of things. Again, we've tried to make it as simple and as easy as possible for you to avail yourself of what Michael has, I think, very compellingly made a case for why it's important to do. So that's one example on the email side. Again, A/B testing, subject lines, from fields, pre-header text, even different messages and different content within messages. So that's one thing that's ready to go right now. You can immediately avail yourselves of it. The second type of A/B testing that Michael had talked about was more on the landing pages, right? And I think they're both very, very important to do so you can get a sense of what type of content is working. So within the landing pages, you set up a landing page, and we make it, again, very simple for you to set up two different landing pages to compare, right? So Michael's example that he gave, I think, was a very good one. So first what I can do is, how many do I want to do, A or B? I want to do 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my landing page, right? And what I want to do is I'm going to sort of say, okay, how many, or what's going to be the test for my landing pages, right? This is basically a template. I'm going to select this, and I'm not going to go through the whole process, but just to show sort of what Michael was talking about is, let's make an example, and kind of a very discrete example. This is one where I'm going to require people to, when they get to this landing page, put in email address, first name, and last name. And all of those are required. But on the second one, I'm going to say, you know what? The second test, I'm going to sort of say, you know what I don't want to do is I don't want to show last name or first name, just email address. That's all I want to do is email address. That's all I want to do. And I want to test those two things against each other. So basically, you get to configure it. Do you want to have it, how many do you want to test? 100, 200, whatever it may be. So think about it. Person gets to the page and they see this. Next person gets to the page and they see this. The next person gets to the page and they might see this. And it basically goes back A and B, A and B. You don't have to do anything for that. It automatically does it for you, where it's set up automatically, okay? And there, automatically, it's just serving up those pages one after the other. One or the other, one or the other. And now, you can determine, once again, who the winner is. You can send yourself a notification once the winner is determined, or you can automatically just stop or start showing the winning page. So you can say, okay, what I want to do is the winner is going to be determined whichever of those pages gets 100 submissions first. And by the way, I don't care what time frame it is. Alternatively, you can say, you know what, it could be the first 100, who knows. What I want to say is I want to give it a week, right? So a week from today, by this time, whoever has the most submissions by this date and time, that's the winner, and that's the one that I want to show. By the way, once that happens, you can go back and change it again and keep changing it to hone in on what the best content is. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be just fields. I can change, like Michael said, the image. I can change the content, and I can test different layouts to see what is working best. Again, you have an instinct, you have a gut feeling, and Michael's right, but you should also verify that that gut feeling is really working. And again, we try and make it as easy as possible to do that. So that's how you set it up. And once again, let's take a look at what some of that tracking would look like once you have that landing page A/B test going. Okay? So I've got one here, sort of a sample one that we can look at. Now here, guess what? This one is not, there's no winner determined yet. So it shows, just like we would in email A/B testing, which one is currently winning. And it'll show you which one is winning. Now, obviously, it's this one that has sort of less fields in it, right? And that's sort of instinctively what we believe, that the more information you have to fill out is going to be a disincentive for people to fill it out. But we don't know, right? And that's what this can do. And it'll show you in real time which one is winning. It's really, really important to do this because you can definitely get the edge and really hone in on what is working, and more importantly, discard what is not working. The whole purpose of all of this is to improve results. Improve those results, whatever those results may be. It might be to sign up for a webinar like we do. It might be to sell something on your website. It might be simply to get people to engage with your content. Either way, there are choices that you have to make, right, about which content is the most compelling. From something as seemingly simple as a subject line to things that are perhaps a little bit more involved and complex, like design, color, text, etc. So that's an example of how we do A/B testing for landing pages. And by the way, these two things are available right now. You can just log on and start using them, and I would highly encourage you to do this. But now let's sort of switch gears a little bit, and we can look at kind of what the title of this webinar is, which is The Road to Predictive. So let's just take a step back and think about what is A/B testing, right? A/B testing is saying, hey, I don't know, I've got this idea for this subject line or that subject line, and let's make it easy to figure out from the data what's working and what's not working. Predictive is kind of at the end of that spectrum, where because of all of this data that we have, billions of data points, and within the Real Magnet platform, millions of data points that you already have about your recipients. Who's opening, who's clicking, who's not opening, what they're clicking on, what landing pages they're submitting, what landing pages they're not submitting, how many times am I sending to these people. All of that we're collecting in real time, and it's sitting there, which is a vast mine of unbelievably useful data. The problem is, it's just like our remote control. There are so many channels to watch that we start watching and we get distracted. There's too many. And that's where the predictive starts coming in. We are working on a lot of things to mine that data and extract the relevant trends and pieces of information, again, that will all go towards helping you make better decisions as marketers to reach your goals quicker and more optimally. And so that's kind of the road to predictive. And I want to give you a little bit of a peek inside kind of the Real Magnet Lab as to what we're working on to give you a sense of what's coming and how it can potentially benefit you. So for all of these things, even for A/B testing, and even if you think about it, every single thing we do in Real Magnet, it basically is broken down only into sort of 3 questions. That's really all we're asking. The first question is what? What content should we be sending? What subject lines work the best? What content on my landing page generates the most submissions? Even though you're not focused on it consciously, subconsciously you're constantly focused on it. What is the best content to send? Now, if you've been a Real Magnet customer for a short time or a long time, we've got that entire history of what you've been sending and can mine that to help you answer that question. The second question that we're always asking is who? I've got this database of 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 people. Who should I be sending that content to? Should I be sending the same content to everyone? Should I be sending specific content to these segments or these people? So the who is very important as well. And then the final one is when. Okay, I now have it down that I know that subject line, let's listen to Mitch drone on for 4 hours, is not going to work. Register early work. But when should I send that? When should I send that email to that segment for maximum impact? So a lot of these questions we at Real Magnet are obsessed about. And we're constantly trying to mine that data to help both answer those questions, but surface that data in a meaningful way for you to act on it. And let's look at some of these examples. Again, let's delve a little bit deeper into the what. So what messages should I be sending, right? So I've got a promo for my webinar that's kind of lengthy and gives a lot of the details, but Michael says, you know what, not a good one. We should just go with much shorter, just give some succinct ones. I don't know which one, so I can A/B test it. But in addition to A/B testing, think about it, you're already doing an A, B, C, D, E, F, G test. You're just sending all the time. But we, in the background, are creating those mini automated A/B tests and are trying to mine that data. What content works the best? If I'm sending an email for a webinar promotion, does it have to be the same content for every recipient? Can I dynamically put in a piece of content that will move the needle more? Again, we talked about subject lines. But how about links? How about which links work the best? If I have an image, a big honking button that says register here versus a text link that says click here, what works best? We have a mountain of data from you that can help us answer those questions. Again, the who. We've got the what, now who. So we can start answering questions by looking at who's responding and who's not responding and what they're responding to questions like these. Which of the prospects is more likely to respond to this type of promotion? And the thing is, should I waste time sending this massive or this single promotion massively to everyone? Or should I be more targeted to send this type of promotion to this type of prospect? How about on the inverse side of it? Which of my members or subscribers are more likely not to renew? So the data cannot just reveal the positive trends, which of course is important, but which of those people are kind of waning in their interest of either your association, your publication, your product? The data can provide early warning signals to say, we better not just keep blasting with the same promotion. We need to retain and do some sort of retention program. So let's focus a specific email to this person, getting them before they jump ship, right? What subscribers are more likely to buy these products? Think of Amazon. Hey, you bought this product, you may be interested in these types of products, right? So these are some of the types of questions that we can help surface and provide information about the who. Then, of course, there's the when. So when is that ideal time to send a renewal notice? People have all sorts of stuff. Some people say, I got to send that first one 90 days before. Some people say the best one for me is 10 days after. Hey, guess what? We've got all the data. We can surface it to give you insight into what is working and what may not be working. And by the way, it's the intersection of those. It's not the when for everyone. It could be the when to send this renewal notice for this type of subscriber, right? Other things. Let's say I'm trying to promote this webinar. Someone will say in our marketing team, you know what we should do? What we need to do is we need to send an email every single day starting 6 weeks before the webinar up to the webinar. Other people say, I don't think so. I think we should send it on a weekly basis. But again, because we have that body of data, we can help you answer those questions. So, the what, the who, and the when. So, like I said, it's kind of, what we have, all of this data and a lot of these new technologies that are becoming available. There's fancy words about machine learning or predictive analytics, but it all can help us get an edge. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking back about the Olympics. Not sure how many people watch the Olympics, but I read something that fascinated me. And what they talked about was, they talked about how in today's Olympics, it's just as much about the athletes competing, but it's the technology that's competing. They did this unbelievable experiment where they took some very famous swimmers. We all know Michael Phelps, of course, but the swimmers from yesteryear, if you will. Spitz, right? Mark Spitz was a very famous Olympian in the 1970s. And basically, they took today's swimmers and put the type of bathing suits and swimming caps that they wore in the 70s. Guess what the result was? Those swimmers today swam perceptibly or perceptibly slower just because of the technology. And here in this graphic, it shows the runners. I don't know how many of you watch this, but they profiled a lot of this. Where on the running uniforms or unitards or whatever they call them, you saw these little triangles. And like, what is that? But basically, these are things to help on the aerodynamics and move people forward. And it's everything to get the edge. So what does that mean? If I put on one of these things with these fancy technologies, am I going to go ahead and beat Usain Bolt in the 100 meters? Highly doubtful. But we're looking for that edge. And it's the same thing in these analytics and predictive technology. One thing is not going to, it may, but the expectation should be in line. It's not going to reveal things like, wow, if I did this, I'm going to increase it 1,000,000,000%. We're looking for the edge. We're looking to get better and better and better. Just like the athletes are doing, both in terms of their training, because they're disciplined, but also the technology, okay? So the first part of it is visualizing that information. It was about a week or so ago, I had this very interesting conversation with one of these data scientists. And to be perfectly frank, there was a good portion of the conversation I didn't understand. It was very sort of esoteric and a high level. But there's one thing that my eyes opened up and caught my attention. He recounted a story of how he was doing a big data predictive analytics project for a huge hospital organization. And he was going through all this and that. And then he said, you know what the most successful thing was? That I was able to simply extract the data and show it to them in a visual way. And that revealed to the naked eye trends that they were like, wow, I didn't know that. And they were able to take action on. So the first step on that road to predictive is just visualizing the data. Take a look at this chart that we're looking at, right? This is basically in 2016, what happens on the internet in 1 minute. It's very hard if I just asked you that question for you to be able to conceptualize what that is. But visually, you can immediately see it. 2.4 million searches on Google, right? How many tweets, how many emails, etc. So the visualization can surface things that are there that you can just look at and go, that makes sense. I want to try that. So we are already visualizing and surfacing a lot of critical information already in marketing automation. Here are just two samples of some reports that we visualized on a campaign. So this one, for example, is engagement rate. So you can see here, you can visualize if there's a drop, hey, something's wrong. If it's going up, that's good. You can visually see it and interpret that. Same thing here. How many people are signing up for the webinar as a result of the first message or the second message. So we're already doing that, but it's limited in the following sense. It's pretty much specific to a campaign. But the things that we're working on is to go wider and broader, okay? So we're taking that next step, and we're going to aggregate that data across all of the different campaigns that you're going to be doing with the goal of uncovering trends and maybe saying, oh, wow, look at these opportunities that exist. And equally important is we're going to make automatic recommendations. Hey, you should try this. This subject line that you're about to put in, you know what? That one has not yielded the best results. This one has yielded the best results. You're about to launch a campaign for a webinar promotion. You're going to use 16 messages to promote that. Hey, guess what? In the past, when you did this, the optimal number of messages was not that. So by taking all of that information and using all of these sophisticated tools, we can start understanding that data and visualizing it for you in a way for you to make some decisions on that. As an example, let's go and look at, back to our case of subject line. We talked just a little while ago about doing an A-B test of a subject line. And remember I said, don't do an A, B, C, D, E, F, G test. True. So when you want to get the answer of which subject line works better, do the A-B test. But we are going to hyper-accelerate that. So for example, of all of the subject lines that you've sent out over time, we're going to analyze those. And we're going to say, hey, what are the top performing subject lines that generated the highest open rate? And equally, what are the ones that are least successful in garnering open rates? And so now, just by seeing these subject lines, visualizing it, you can make interpretations. And you can make maybe decisions, say, I get it. You know what? I'm just not going to use that one. Think of those TV channels. Instead of having to go through every one of those channels, you're going to say, you know what? Forgot about this one. Not going to use it. But we're going to go a step further. And out of all these subject lines, we're going to visualize a lot of the common words and phrases to help you hone in on what that best messaging should be. So again, we're able to do this, and this is a very visual tool. It's like, the most successful subject lines that I have the frequency of the word shipping or save more in it. Again, it's just an example. By the way, if you constantly have the same subject line, we're going to detect that as well and say, guess what? You may want to do some A-B testing so you can get some differentials to see which one is better. So that's one example of surfacing data that we have, that you generate, that we can visualize to help make more recommendations for better marketing. Landing pages. Michael talked about that, and I showed you how you can easily do it. So we already said, hey, which landing page works best? This one or this one, etc. But because if you have all sorts of landing pages over time, we can automatically mine that data and help surface and answer questions like which pages perform the best. And I did make sort of a radical example to show you, the one that has one field in it for email performs better than the one that has 3 or 4 or 17 for that matter. But that's kind of like an extreme example. But what's the best in the middle? What is the optimal number of fields that I have that I can get people to submit and not turn people away? And maybe there's one field that I ask for all the time that might be the determinant that says, you know what, when I ask this field, and I don't know what that is, religion, whatever that field is, that turns people off. So these types, just by analyzing the frequency, the submissions, the data, we're going to be able to shine a lens on that and provide useful, actionable data for you. Click analysis. We talked about that in the A-B testing, right? You can test different messages, and you can test different link text. Click here, click now, in the image or not. But what we're able to do, if you availed yourselves of our click view tracking, it shows where in the email the clicks are or the links are and how many people have clicked, etc. But we're going to aggregate all that information together and show you, hey, when you put links in this quadrant of the email, it's generating 20% click-through. Here, it's generating not so many. And that'll give you insight into where to put those clicks or those links. Now, we also talked about the who. This was all about the what. What content, what subject line, how many fields on the landing page, what content on the landing page. But think about all the data that you have. Everyone just visualize either your spreadsheet or your database in Real Magnet where you've got all your fields. First name, last name, address, zip code, country, and then all the custom fields that you have. You might have created a field called title, job type, revenue, customer type. All of that data is sitting there and is potentially extremely valuable. So once again, by extracting that data, we can start learning from it and once again visualizing and helping you predict what might be best to market to these people. So for example, what patterns can we see? So if I look at all the people that registered for the webinar and I look at their job title, for example, and I see something like this, that tells me something. And then if I look at all the people who I marketed to who did not register and I surface something like this, it'll tell me something. So we're going to be able to take all of that data and interpret it and discern patterns and present that to you once again so you can make informed, better marketing decisions. So that's kind of the what, the who, and the when. And these are some of the things that we're working on here in the Real Magnet Lab. Really excited about it. There's kind of a convergence of two things going on. Number one, as Michael pointed out, we just have this vastness of data, and it's both good and bad, as he said. But we're going to focus on the good. Because we now have this data, that's number one. Number two, the technology is really getting good of taking all that raw data and making correlations and relationships and inferences that we as a human might have a very hard time doing. So this is what we're working on. We're super excited about it, and I wanted to just give you a little bit of a peek as to what's coming. But don't forget that A/B testing is available now, and I would encourage everyone to take advantage of it. And then in the coming months, we're going to start revealing some of this new stuff. And with that, be happy to take any questions we might have.
All right, Mitch, thank you so much for all that awesome information and for the enthusiasm as always. We do have quite a bit of questions, so thank you everybody for participating in the webinar. We hope you guys got a lot out of it and are excited about using the A/B testing features that we have shown off here today. So first, I'll take the first question. And yes, we will be sending out a recording of the video. We send out, for every webinar that we do, we send out a follow-up email that includes the recording of the webinar to everybody who attended and everybody who registered. So if you want to watch it again or if you want to pass it along to any colleagues, keep an eye out on your email for the next couple days and you will be getting that in your inbox shortly. So now, on to the questions for Mitch and Michael. Number one, when you're A/B testing landing pages, do the landing pages have to be hosted by Real Magnet?
No, good question. Very good question. They don't. They can be either way. Either we host them or they're hosted by you. Either way.
Awesome. And kind of a piggyback on that question, can they be landing pages that have already been created in the past, or do they have to be new, freshly created for the test?
No, that's a good question. You can go back and edit. So basically, this feature is now available. So you have a campaign that's been launched with only one landing page. You can go back and edit that campaign and add the A/B test to it and redeploy it.
All right, awesome. So this is kind of an opinion question, and I guess it's related to time constraints. If you're going to be testing one of these items, which do you think is more important, your landing page or the messages that you use to push people to that landing page?
I think we should cancel all plans for dinner to answer that question. I mean, here's what I think. And I don't want to be flippant about it, but it really depends, right? I actually think, you know, if you want to get started, it's probably the easiest to do, let's say, a subject line one, because you're going to see what kind of moves the needle the most on there, and also sort of, you know, build your confidence to get going on it. But, I mean, it depends if these landing pages are kind of mission critical for certain things. If they're downloads or something like that, depends on what the end goal is. But hopefully, what I'm hopefully have demonstrated is you don't have to make that choice, because hopefully both of them are so easy to do, you can do them both simultaneously.
All right. Another kind of opinion-related questions. How many different variations would you recommend testing at one time? Is there a maximum, minimum, kind of a sweet spot?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's almost like, I need to do my A/B test on variables to find out what the optimal one is. So here's kind of a rule of thumb, I think, to think about it. The more things you're testing simultaneously, the blurrier the results will get, right? So it's the best practice to test one element discretely, a subject line or subject lines. Or if you're doing landing pages, think about it. You could have, on the landing page, you could test the number of fields, that's sort of one element, and you could also test the different content, the text or the images on that page. But now, let's say you did that, right, simultaneously, and you got the results were 45 or 49.51. I mean, do you really know which one moved the needle? It's going to be harder for you to discern. If you keep it to one distinct variable that you're testing on, it's much easier to make that interpretation. Now, having said that, if there are things that are pretty close together, like it's maybe one extra field or two extra fields and different, you can put it all together and see. It's more up to you. But again, there is that best practice of the more elements you're testing simultaneously, the blurrier the results are going to be to determine which of those elements move the needle. If you don't care, it's fine to test them all at once.
All right, and we've got another question here. One of our clients would like to A/B test click-through rates on a plain text email versus an HTML email that contain the same offer.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things you can do on that one. You can do that, but there's a couple caveats to that. Number one, what you have to do is you have to make sure that you have text link tracking enabled, meaning that you're actually appending the tracking code to the text link, and we can sort of take that one offline. We'll get someone back. It's absolutely possible to do it, but I don't want to sort of go through the technicalities with everyone else online, but we can show you step by step on how to do that.
Awesome. All right, and I think we got one more for you today. I know we're up against our time limit here, so one of our clients would like to know a little bit more about A/B testing of send times. If you could walk us through it or just give us a little bit more information about how that works.
Yeah, so on the send time, it's sort of just like when you're doing that A/B test. Instead of testing the subject line, you test out the time of day. So you're sending that message to, let's say, 100,000 people. Once again, you take 5% of it. You send half of that at 9 a.m., you send the second half at 3 p.m., and then you see, based on, let's say you want to do opens, which of those samples has the highest open rate. And let's say the winner is at 3 p.m. Boom, the rest of it goes at 3 p.m.
All right, and with that, everybody, I think that takes up our time for today. Thank you to Michael and Mitch so much for your time and all the effort that you put into these presentations for us. They all are chock full of very useful information that I hope you guys on the line are getting a lot out of. We also appreciate your time. We know you guys have busy days, so thank you for taking time out of your day to join us over here. Keep an eye out on your emails for that follow-up email and take a look at the presentation again. Send it along to any colleagues who might find it worthwhile. And also keep an eye out for announcements of our future Real Magnet webinars. We hope to see you on many of them. So until then, and until next time, thank you guys all for your time, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a great afternoon.